Welcome back to the Repco Bathurst 12-hour, day number one of this three-day carnival that continues to grow and grow here at Bathurst. Something a bit different now on the circuit. Some Group S racing, a bit of yesteryear out on the racetrack. Lots of Porsches, got a few Corvettes and Alfa Romeos amongst that field. Joining me is the Business Development Director from Porsche Cars Australia, Alex Webster. Welcome.
G'day, Matt. How are you this morning?
Awesome. It's always awesome being here, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, we're so privileged to be here, especially in a category such as ours. It's fantastic.
Now, you're the man. You're the voice. You know every much about this category. I'm looking at this sheet that you put together during the week. Fantastic effort, by the way. Gets us covered, makes it look like I'm half know what I'm looking at.
Exactly. We try our best to make you look good, Matt. This is what we're here for.
Done a very good job. So tell us about the category. It's a bit of everything from the 60s and 70s, but we've got categories inside the category.
Yeah, so you've got lots of races going on within races. This is obviously qualifying today, but classic sports car racing, or Group S as it's known, are basically production sports cars of the era. So the 50s, 60s and 70s, and that's basically the way that the categories are broken up. So the cars in the 50s are grouped together, 60s and then 70s accordingly. So whilst you've got the outrights battles going on, there's lots of class category battles going on at the same time.
What sort of lap times are we expecting to see from, say, first to last? Because obviously we're going to see a lot of lap traffic with a field of this size.
There will be. Some of the closing speeds under lap traffic will certainly be quite significant. But the guys at the front, so Jeff Morgan, Terry Lawler, Doug Barber, they'll be doing in the low 2-minute 30s, I would have thought, once they get to race pace. They were doing about 2-minute 40s this morning, but in the practice, obviously, Jeff Morgan got down to a 2:37, so I'd expect that they'd be somewhere in the mid-2:35s.
Practice was held early this morning. They were one of the first categories out there. What was the feedback from the pits?
I think everyone was super excited to be back, number one. There was a little bit of rain overnight, so track was a little greasy in spots going over the top, but all in all, it was very clean because the big categories hadn't been out yet and maybe put down some marbles. But no, everyone just super excited, and we had everyone circulate and get back to the pits after the session, which is always good.
Jeff Morgan, you bring up that name. That brings me back to my teenage years to see him run in Porsche Cup. He wheeled out that incredible, at the time, was a brand new 911, I think, like 95, 96. It was years ahead of everything else that was running at the time.
It was, and that car actually has only been recently restored up in Queensland and back to that livery. And yeah, look, Jeff, I hope he doesn't mind me saying, is now in his mid-70s. And look, his name's atop of the totem pole at the moment. So he's still got it. He's still fighting fit. And hopefully I'm like that when I get to 76.
So the multicoloured car that he had, is it
the Vodafone car.
Vodafone car.
Yeah, the 993 RS. That's right.
Wow. Where was that hiding?
I can't remember where it was hiding, but the Bowden boys actually put it back together. I can't remember if it's owned by them or it's one of their friends or customers, but that car has now surfaced again. It's back to exactly the way as when Jeff ran it.
That was one of my first years in the sport. Like 1996, he wheeled that car out, and the cars we were using were 1977, 78, 911 RSRs.
That's right. You had Porsche Cup back in the day.
Yeah.
That sort of had all these run what you brung. There was 944s, there was 959 clones, there was early 911s, late model 911s. There was even a couple of 928s out there.
That's right.
Like we've got actually on grid today.
Wayne Park.
Wayne Park, yes.
Harry Witham was another name for
Harry, absolutely. Harry still makes his wheels down in Rye in Victoria. Peter Boylan, who's out there today as well, also ran at that point in time.
Fantastic. Good to see these guys out on the track. So you've got the Porsches out there. We've got a few. I saw a Shelby Mustang going through the shot a moment ago. A couple of Alfettas in the field. A Ferrari Dino in the mix. There's something here for everyone.
There is, and I guess that's the great bit of Group S. There's a bit of everything, and I think that's the lovely part of this category is you've got sprites battling big V8s. So 1700 or 1200 cc cars battling, 7-litre V8s, and so that's what you'll see. You'll see over the top the smaller cars, the more nimble cars, the ones with better brakes will catch over the top, and then you've got three big straights. So that's when the horsepower comes in here and the big guys will disappear. But it's great fun racing. At a track here, it's a little bit more suited to the V8s and the bigger capacity cars. But yeah, watch for some of the smaller capacity cars, such as some of the Alphas. So if you're looking at guys like Spencer Rice or even Tony Karaflanovsky or those guys, they'll actually be pushing up to the front as well.
Tony Kay will drive anything.
He will drive anything, absolutely.
Tell us about your history in the sport and your day-to-day job at Porsche Cars Australia. It sounds like the dream.
Yeah, look, it is a dream. I've been lucky enough to work for Porsche now for 13 years. I'm the Director of Business Development, which if you ask my wife, she says, what's that? which is basically anything that's not in sales or after sales or marketing, basically sits in my department. So very diverse, a little bit like our category, and super exciting. So very lucky to work for Porsche. On the Group S side, I've been racing since 2006 in the category. I'm on my third different car. I started in a 2-litre 911 and ran that for about 8 years. Got another 2-litre, which was a slightly later model, and then since 2019, I've been running a car very similar to Jeff Morgan's car, a 2.7 Carrera. So unfortunately, I'm not running this weekend, so I'm helping out and sitting here next to you. So at least I'm here.
That was my next question. Are you having a bit of FOMO?
I am. Actually, little bit's probably an understatement, to be honest. I thought I was okay with it until I saw practice this morning, and I was sitting up in the tower, and I thought, oh, I wish I was out there.
Yeah, of all the tracks, I'm going to miss Bathurst.
Exactly.
This is great, though. I was looking through the entry list during the week. We spoke on the phone about how this is going to play out. And as I mentioned during the combined sedans category this morning, we want to see race cars out on the track like that category suiting for like your 70s, 80s, 90s. This is going back further in time, and this is great to see.
It is. And look, these are production sports cars. So the great thing about this category is that you can take a road-going MGB or an Alpha or whatever it might be that was a production sports car and actually bolt a cage into it, put some racing tyres, maybe put some decent pads in it, get your licence and come out and play. And so you've got the two cars that are on screen at the moment, which are the Shelby and the Porsche. Yeah, they're worth a couple $100,000 more, but you've got guys in the field that have got into the category for $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. So it's certainly accessible, which is great.
Yeah. Terry Lawler never turns out a bad-looking race car. He's the king of presentation, isn't he? He leads his field around in his very early days of qualifying. They were out earlier today for practice, and it's turned out to be a really nice day here at Mount Panorama.
It's got warm in the last sort of hour or so the sun's really come out, the cloud cover's gone. So, yeah, this morning was a lot cooler, and it even had a bit more humidity in the air from the rain overnight, but it's certainly getting warm. You can see I'm here in the booth, and it's a lot warmer.
Yes, they say these places are comfortable. These rooms are quite warm at the best time. This looks busy on the main straight here. What cars are going to like these conditions? I mean, they're rather cool conditions, any race car does.
Well, look, I mean, you've got Joe Collegia here and his big Corvette. I mean, this thing in a straight line is absolutely hilarious. We think it's got somewhere north of 600 horsepower. It won't be that great over the top, but Joe's been for many years trying to get a grips on this car because it is a really big car. And you can see against the Datsun there, he's really starting to pull out a little bit. But under brakes, you watch the cars in the back there. You've got Wayne Potts directly behind him in the 280Z, David Caneen in the 3-litre 911, and then another Datsun behind it in Michael McElligott. And then a little bit of diversity further again, another Porsche, but a 928, so a V8 with Tom Walstad.
Collegia's going to let the field go here. It's about 3 or 4 cars queuing up. And you're right, he's going to be great in a straight line. It's like almost like the mini days where they'd be great across the hill, and then the Mustang and Camaros today will just overtake it once again.
Yeah, exactly. And look, Joe's a bit of a guy that eases into the weekend. So he this morning wasn't fast at all, but he will over the weekend get a little bit faster and faster. So I think he'll probably qualify somewhere in the early teens, but let's see how he goes. He might get a cracker in.
We'll look at Wayne Potts across the top of the mountain now. You talk to drivers, I mean, there's been quite a few that have been here several times, but when you come back to this place, it still continues to blow your mind, doesn't it?
Look, I think nothing prepares you really for, especially going over the top. I mean, as I tend to say, Bathurst is 3 straight bits and a wiggly bit in between, and the wiggly bit is just mind-blowing. I mean, coming down here into the dipper, I mean, it is absolutely amazing how far it does come down, and TV just doesn't do it justice.
They're trying their best.
They try their best.
Particularly through this section, how quick it drops away from Brock Skyline down here. And I think coming here for the first time, and it sounds really weird saying this, walk the track the opposite direction, then you get a feel for how steep it actually is.
Yeah, you can't certainly feel it after you go up, and you might have to do a couple of stretches up the top of Brock Skyline too. Kent Brown here in his MGB has a bit of an issue. That's no good. Looks like he's pulled over on the side of the wall, against the wall. He's at the cutting, which is not a great place to be, but hopefully the flaggies and everyone knows where he is and gives him a wide berth.
So it's on the exit left-hand side. It's out of harm's way at the moment. There'll be a local yellow warning the drivers there, so car 51. It's a beautiful MG, one of 2 or 3 we have in the field this weekend. Terry Lawler, quickest at the moment with his first flying lap, a 2:32.83.
Yeah, which isn't far off his lap record, to be honest. So that's right on pace. And then Jeff Morgan just behind him, about 3 seconds away, doing a 2:35. Doug Barber, Andy Purvis. So 3 Porsches in behind. And then you've got Wayne Potts, who was just on screen a moment ago.
Session has gone red, incidentally. Cars are slowing down and making their way back into the paddock. And that's what's so important about any qualifying session, to get a couple of laps in the books there, just in case we don't get to freeze the time in these sessions. The time continues to count down, and our officials, a lot of which are volunteers, do their best to make sure we keep the show moving. And for car 51, it's come to a standstill with just 14 minutes remaining in this qualifying session.
Yeah, Kent is an ex-president of Group S Racing, actually, so I succeeded Kent back in the day. And but yeah, he's got a lovely turned out MGB. It's a shame that he's got some troubles there that have obviously stopped him going up the hill.
So Lawler at the top, Jeff Morgan 3 seconds behind the moment. Doug Barber, that we saw at the start of the session, is in third. So the usual suspects. They
are. And then the interesting thing is the gap then between Purvis and Potts in 5th place. So Potts is doing a 2:45, and there's then a few of them that are sort of tucked in behind that. So David Caneen in another 911. Spencer Rice, probably the standout there. Spencer's in an Alfa Romeo, about 2,000 cc, and he's done a 2:48. James Calvert-Jones in 9th, and then Tom Walstab has just cracked in the top 10 at a 2:49, which is important because of our qualifying format that will come into race 1, where we will invert the top 10. So for the first race. So what you'll see is, if this is the finishing order, Tom would actually be on pole for race 1. So maybe someone better go down to pit lane and tell him, hey, just go pit, put in the pits and park it.
Yeah, or pray this session is delayed for another 2.5 minutes.
Exactly.
Tell me, this group of drivers here, do they run regularly together? And I ask that because when traffic gets into the way, you've got to read the drivers. And if you don't run with them regularly, you know you can run into trouble.
Yeah, look, a lot of the guys run together for quite a number of years. And for most of them, they'll run in their state. So we've got about 11 different events throughout Australia. And that's in Victoria, South Australia, New South Wales, Queensland. And a lot of the guys have been running for quite some time. And you tend to find out who you're running with. And from that perspective, you then get to know how they race. Are they hard racers, or are they going to give you the room? And look, we're gentlemen racers. We're not there to try and damage cars. We call it a no-contact sport. And we want to make sure that our prides and joy are on the trailers or the transporters going home the same way they started.
So it's like saying it's a spirited demonstration.
Look, I wouldn't call it a demonstration. There's guys that like to think that they're playing for sheep stations, but no, not at all.
What would you think's going on with the MG here?
Look, I know that actually Paul Kent had a similar issue when we were last here in 2020. I think it was that year that he had a similar issue, and I think actually broke down in a very similar spot. So he'll be very filthy that he's got the car, and also be disappointed that he's affected the entire grid by causing a red flag. But safety first, and hopefully they can remove that car shortly to a safe place. And look, Mountain Straight going up there is so hard on small capacity cars. Having raced a 2-litre 911 here, if you've got any sort of mechanical sympathy, you're almost saying sorry to the car going up the hill, because you can just feel it. You're actually wringing its neck. And that continues as you go through up to the cutting. And yeah, it's hard on small capacity cars, let alone old cars.
One thing he wouldn't have been doing then was touching that brake pedal. He wanted that car to freestyle. It's a long way up. It's such a sharp climb up to the top there. They might just steer him in behind the wall here for this session.
Yeah, that's a great thing that there are some spots around the track that they can actually back some cars in there, and hopefully allow us to go back to qualifying very soon. I was unfortunate enough that I had an issue, I think it was about 2018, and I had the car make a noise that I didn't think was a good noise, and I got to the top of the hill and sort of put it in a similar spot, and they flat towed me to the top of the hill, unbuckled me and said, see how far you get. And so
Thanks.
I never forget, because I still had the camera rolling, and I was doing about 80 or 90 miles an hour rolling in complete silence other than tyre noise, and managed to get it back to dummy grid. So I was going through the chase and then trying to get through the turn at the chase to get down into dummy grid without having to be rehooked up. So I was quite proud of myself.
At least it cured that weird sound you thought you heard.
Well, yeah, it went away, funnily enough.
Time continues to count down here. We shouldn't be too far away from the green light going on at the end of pit lane as the Repco Bathurst 12 out. There's a racetrack, the Nürburgring. Oh, that sends shivers down your spine just seeing the Green Mile. Look at that place.
I was there
been?
probably 2015. I was at the 24-hour event, and yeah, that is another place that is just unbelievable. And so being out there in the middle of the day or the middle of the night and having the opportunity to go to a few different locations, that is just next level. Yeah, it is frightening but exciting all at the same time.
The original track, that is just insane.
It is. So as they're coming back out onto the track here, they're a little bit mixed up. So you'll see a few of the competitors in pit lane pulled in to try and maybe adjust some tyre pressures. So you see Andy Purvis in the yellow 911, Terry Lawler, Joe Collegia, even Tony Karafinovsky. He's actually gone and changed some tyre pressures. So there will be a little bit of lap traffic going on here, and so trying to get a clear lap might be a little bit harder.
Tell me, how much difference does tyre pressures make even in this category?
Look, the different cars all work on their tyres a little bit harder and differently. So lighter cars, obviously, a lot easier on their tyres. The bigger cars, they're obviously working a bit harder. There's also different tyres. There's not a control tyre, so there's all sorts of manufacturers. You have to run to the tyre specifications. So most of the cars out there will be running on 60 profile tyres. So most cars, that looks like a balloon. But and there's a couple of cars out there because they're later models, like some of the 3-litre cars like David Caneen's on track now, or Tom Wolstad that's just about to come over the brow. They're on 50s because the car, when they were released new, were released on 50 profile tyres. So based on what's available with the tyre manufacturers, a little bit of a roll of the dice, but it allows us to sort of see some cars benefit from it, others not so much.
And you've got to look after them from the minute you go out in first practice to the end of tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, and I was in, as we were starting to filter out of our paddock area, there was a few cars there that had got into putting on some green tyres. So I saw Jeff Morgan had, I know that Terry Lawler did, and there was a few others there that have bolted on some greens to try and make sure they're maximising their qualifying time.
And for Terry Lawler, it's a case of what hasn't he driven over the years. His collection is insane.
It is, and Terry actually used to run a Porsche 911 here in Group S before he then changed. He went off and he's done some other things. He went and raced in, didn't make the Carrera Cup, but he certainly was running a Cup car there for a while in Challenge. And then he's gone and raced Group A and C, and you've seen him in Group A and C. Had a go at TCM as well. Yeah. But he loves the camaraderie of Group S, and certainly we love having him there. As you said before, his cars are absolutely exquisite. You can probably see him here in pit lane. He's probably looking at the timing and saying, I don't need to do any more laps. No. I'll just park it.
3 seconds is the margin, first to second. Jeff Morgan has certainly gone out. In fact, Lawler is the sole car in pit lane with just over 6.5 minutes remaining. This beautiful 66 model Shelby Mustang, the GT350, and comfortable margin. I'll say comfortable. It's basically get out and have some lunch now.
It's 3 seconds, but we'll call that comfortable. In most categories, that would be like, oh my gosh. So the first flying lap's now being done. Now they've cleared the start-finish line.
So for a few of the cars down the bottom of the field, they were just starting their flying laps. That's why we've got these big gaps in between. Some, in fact, haven't got a lap in the books yet. So the tail enders, particularly for their class order, they'll be pushing here with 6 minutes to go.
Yeah, look, there's a couple of cars there that are still maybe a little bit out of place. So Joe Collegia, as we said, down in 17th at the moment. He could probably get a little bit more out of that with a clear lap. Hugh Harrison in one of the Alphas, he's generally very quick, but he hasn't looked like he hasn't got a clear lap yet. But the top 15, I would say, is probably pretty close to what we'd expect. There's a couple of movers there. Graham Golson's moved up into 12th, so that's a great effort, driving a 1750cc Alpha. Ross Jackson in the Di Tommaso Pantera is hot on the heels of Tom Wolstad in the 928.
Now that's cool, the Di Tommaso Pantera. I haven't seen too many of them over the last few years out there. That's great.
Yeah, and Ross has been running that car. I'll stand corrected, but I think close to 20 years he's been running that car. He's certainly been running Group S for many years, and that car has been a stalwart of the category. It's been around for many a time. It's adorned many a poster in historic racing, that's for sure.
And it's kids growing up.
It is.
On the same wavelength?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Graham Golson, you mentioned, he's no stranger to Mount Panorama as well. Raced for many, many years.
Yeah, his father Ray obviously is synonymous here back in the day, racing Alphas, during the 500 and the 1000. And Graham, who's actually one of our Porsche dealers, he's the owner of Porsche Centre Canberra, and he's out here in his Alpha. I keep giving him a nudge and saying, you've got to go and get into a Porsche, and he says, I know, but he's still very closely connected with the Alfa Romeo brand as he has for many years, and that car is also just beautifully prepared, and he certainly knows how to drive.
He's run that car for a few years now too.
He has, and look, he runs that car in Group N, and we've invited him in here. He is a Group S member, and there's a couple of Group N cars there over this weekend. We've also got John Harrison in his Cortina and Spencer Rice. So the Group N, Group S cars are very close. You've got touring cars versus sports cars. The rules are fairly the same. The tyres are fairly similar. So, yeah, we thought those members that have got similar cars come and play with us over the weekend.
And how did the process go with this? Was it invitational this weekend? Because there's been obviously a lot of interest to come and run with a 12-hour support weekend.
Yeah, look, we've been lucky enough to be, this is our 4th time in the last about 7 years we've been back, and it's nice with the job that I got a few contacts through the industry that you can make a couple of calls, and yeah, look, I think they see that there's great alignment between these old cars and what's actually running in the main feature race. Huge disparity, obviously, in speed and difference, but these were essentially the cars that were being hotted up and made race ready back in the day, and that's what you sort of see with the evocation of the current cars. So there's a nice connection there. We're unlucky that we had maybe just a little bit of a drop-off on our numbers. The last few years we've been able to get 50+ cars, which causes a lot of headaches trying to get that many cars in and out of the paddock, I can tell you. So we're down to about 36, 37 cars this weekend, which is manageable, I'll call, but still a great diversity of vehicles to see running around the track.
One thing that's amazed me in the last 3 or 4 years, we've come out the other side of the 2020-21 turbulence, whatever you want to call it now. It seems like motorsport in particular has just rebounded and gone harder back into the skies. There's numbers everywhere. The growth is, because there was a worry there for a while. This might take years to get cars back out of sheds, back on the racetracks. But it feels like they put 240 volts through the whole industry, and there's cars everywhere again.
There is. We're lucky that we've got a large member base and we've got a lot of cars to run. So last year, I think we had about 120 different cars run across Australia. The average person was running around about 2.5 to 3 events a year, so they're not running lots and lots of events. But most of us have full-time jobs. A lot of guys out there are retired, but there's still the amount of times that you can get away from the wife and family and juggle all the other things in between racing.
The Great Escape, I think they call it.
Correct.
It's a couple of MG midgets we're watching. If you're watching our super screen coverage around Mount Panorama today, Tammy Holtz is out there in the 70. David Bajan from New South Wales in the 72 version. They look like a whole lot of fun. And MG racing continues to grow right around this country. I remember calling as a up-and-coming call of some 20 years ago at Phillip Island. There was a whole fleet of cars back then. Yeah, 2 of the fastest little sprites are actually not here this weekend. So that's the Meyer brothers, both Simon and Damien. They're actually over in Stuttgart at the moment for a trade fair for their business, and unfortunately couldn't make it. So that meant that they're normally sort of a top 6 or 7 cars. So to have those guys in 1275cc cars really go against the big guys is quite amazing. They're both Australian karting champions. They know how to steer and they put it all on the line. I remember a few years ago when they were going down Conrod, they basically were going side by side and we're all sitting behind them, and you could almost see them giggling because we couldn't go past them because they were just conveniently placed down the straight. An open top driving around here, fine in the sun, but we know what Mount Panorama can serve up from time to time. Yeah, look, it's again back in 2020 when we ran, it was 42 degrees, and it certainly, I know my car actually had the unfortunate expiry in race 3, and yeah, look, it's certainly the heat for the old cars. They're going to do somewhere between 8 and 10 lap races this weekend, which I can tell you doesn't sound like much in the car. It's bloody hot. It's a long race. And it's a long race. Yeah. So closing seconds of this. Oh, that's close. Karen Filosky and the Alpha coming down the hill on the MGs. And Tony Kay on our screens. There's such a big field, we'll hopefully have to flip over and see where Tony Kay's back in 16th position. Right now in car 88, regular in the Touring Car Masters. This will be his final lap. And Terry Lawler, well, he didn't have to leave the pits because nobody's getting close to him. Ponce has gone up into 6th spot now at 2:43, but 10 seconds away from Terry Lawler, who just needed 3 laps to do it. Yeah, and look,
Tony's just gone past Tammy Hotz. Tammy's actually on our committee, so it's great to see a female out here racing, which is fantastic. We've had other people over the years like Dominique Chalier that's raced in an Alpha, so we'd really encourage any other girls coming off. Oh, we've got a turnaround there. So you've actually got David Bajan. Not sure if he did that on his own. Looks like he might have.
Saw the cloud of dust as he made his way through the chase, give the thumbs up to.
Hopefully he can get that restarted, but we're getting very close to time being called.
And that was going to be his best lap as well. What a shame. It's such a long lap in these cars. If you're going to make a mistake, you'd rather do it the first corner than the last.
Absolutely. I know that, you don't want to go off anywhere here. There's very few places that you can actually leave the track safely. That's probably one of them, especially if you can say, yeah, he's done that on his own. He's just taken a bit too much coming out of the chase, and a couple of wheels on the gravel, that'll do it.
Tony Owenton behind him in the Shelby Mustang, just driving straight through that dust. So the session finishes with Terry Lawler at the top. 2:32.83, but the top 10 get reversed around.
They do. So you'll see there that Ross Jackson in 10th, he'll actually be on pole for race one, assuming no one actually puts in the last lap. Andrew Whiteside in 9th, Michael McKelligan in the Datsun in 8th, Dave Caneen in 7th, Wayne Potts, as you just said, in 6th. Spencer Rice, wow, what a great lap. He's done a 2:42 in his Alfa Romeo, put it into 5th. Andy Purvis in 4th, Doug Barber, which was the 911 car that you just saw going through there into the chase, in 3rd. Jeff Morgan, and then Terry Lawler still sitting in the pits with a 2:32 on pole. He'll go back and start 10th.
I expect him to charge through in race number 1 later today. Here's Barber. It's going to be an improvement on his time, although it's not too bad. He wasn't too far away from his second sector as he finishes off the lap there, and will stay in 3rd with Terry Lawler comfortably grabbing the pole with the top 10 to be spun around. That's a good lap for Jackson. He got that on the final lap as well to drop into 10th spot. And for Wayne Potts, he was on his flying lap too, and the Datsun stopped at the top there at John Hinksman Vista. So he may have moved up a couple of positions had the car made it to the end. Sadly, that's been pushed back behind the wall.
Yeah, and look, he'll be annoyed about that. He's finished in 6th spot, so some good results. David Baker in 11th, James Galvert-Jones in 12th. Joe Collegia did get a little bit quicker over that session as we thought. He's up in 13th. Tom Wallstab in the 928 in 14th. So, yeah, a good variety of cars. Graham Golson ended up finishing in 15th. Although Wallstab's just gone and done a great lap on the very last lap and has jumped up into 8th. So he'll be stoked about that. He'll start on the second row.
And it pushes Jackson out of the 10.
He'll be filthy.
And Whiteside actually got into the 10 there as well. So that changed at the end of the session. So Whiteside will start from pole, will flip the top 10 around. Terry Lawler expected to charge, though, from the 5th row. Jeff Morgan second, Doug Barber.